Spencer, what do you think about Deshaun Watson? Do you think they're going to play him in the preseason? Would you play him in the preseason?
Whether or not they're gonna play him again is a fascinating question. Because I do think on some level they want to kind of keep him in bubble wrap. But I think personally, and I don't usually like to make a big deal out of preseason games and guys getting reps, and I'm always in favor of just kind of protecting guys if you need to and whatever. Like Denzel Ward last year, remember in the last preseason game they played him and he ends up with a concussion, and then we were worried about what that meant for the start of his season. So you just never know. But with Watson, I need to see something. I think that's where I'm at with it. Is just we have yet to really see him be the quarterback he used to be. We all have questions about whether or not he can even still get back to being that guy he was in Houston. And you got a new offense that's supposed to be catered to him. You're coming off the shoulder surgery. I just think it's a perfect storm for him to have to get some reps in live game speed, live game action, even though it's the preseason, just to kind of get himself kind of reacclimated and feeling good before the season starts. Because I mean, last year his direct quote was, it's going to be fireworks week one, and he got off to a little bit of a slow start. It took him a couple weeks to really look like the guy that we were hoping he was going to be, and that we thought he was going to be. And so, yeah, I'm done with the rust conversation. I'm done talking about that, being like, oh, well, he's coming back from the shoulder injury. It's week one. Give him some time. I want him to be as ready as possible for the start of the season. So I would play him, and it would probably come in that second preseason game, which is usually like your dress rehearsal game. So we'll see if he plays next week in the first game. Maybe they give him like a quarter, and then they expand that to a half in the second game. But I definitely think he needs as many reps as he can get before the season starts to avoid having to deal with this whole conversation about rust and getting reacclimated and all that again.
Yeah, I would. I don't know if I'd play him in the first preseason game. What I would do, he has to be tied to the starting offensive line because I don't want,
Yeah, for sure.
I don't want, you don't want somebody missing a block and somebody getting hit from the blind side. I'd probably play him at least a couple of series, maybe even first quarter plus a series or two in that second one. But yeah, I'm
Yeah.
with you. I fully, and here's where I'm at with this, and I've asked a number of people this. Until this shoulder injury, which by all accounts he's back from, it hadn't been. I can't come up with a guy that was a Pro Bowl quarterback who suddenly lost it and wasn't seriously injured. Nobody's been able. The closest anybody got, I had a PFF guy say, "Well, Mark Bulger," and he said it was more from taking hits. So that's why I think he's back on the field. I think he's going to end up being pretty good. My question is, can he stay healthy enough?
Yeah, the health thing is always going to be a concern, especially when you have a quarterback who likes to run. I mean, I actually asked Deshaun back in, I think it was June or end of May during OTAs. I asked him point blank about like whether or not they're talking to him about ways he can protect himself better, and he gets a little defensive. I think just in general, when people are kind of questioning him and the way he does things. But I think his answer was basically just kind of rooted in this part of my game. I can't be afraid to take hits. And so it's not, there's a lot more RPO stuff in this offense. So you're going to see him doing even more of it. And he's got to just get down and slide and make sure he doesn't take the hits. But I think concerns I had about the shoulder injury, and there's still a little bit of doubt because we've never seen a football player.
Yep.
There's like if you try to find examples of a football player experiencing this injury, there aren't many.
No,
But
you're right.
if any, you can't find any, especially a quarterback, nonetheless. But the what he talked about, I remember back in April, was this is generally a pitcher injury, and generally the pitchers who have had this come back and they've been fine. And so I'm taking his word on that. I'm taking what science says on that. The doctor he worked with, Dr. Elatrosh, I know he's done surgeries on a ton of baseball players who had the same injury, and they've come back and been okay and been able to pitch. So that makes me feel better about that because that was my big question for much of the offseason. But there still always is that little bit of doubt where it's like, well, what if he doesn't have it still? What if he gets hurt again or he takes a hit on the shoulder? What happens? And unfortunately, we're not going to have answers to those questions until he really takes those first hits. But yeah, the health thing I think is the biggest concern at this point. If he can stay healthy, I mean, it's camp. I don't want to read too much into it, but he has looked pretty solid at the start of camp here in terms of his ability to throw the ball, still spin it. And we just have to hope that that can translate now in preseason games if he plays, and obviously during the regular season.